Hi students, welcome to lesson 7. So in lesson 7, we are going to be looking at comprehension. And as we know, comprehension is a very complex thing to assess. So there are a lot of things that go into reading comprehension, which I will discuss in an overview video here in the lesson. So you're going to be reading chapters 5 in your essentials book and chapter 9 in your essentials book. I have recorded two short lecture videos about understanding and assessing reading comprehension. So they are split into two parts. So please be sure to read those. They go through all of the sub skills that go into um, a reader being able to comprehend what they read. And then also the different types of comprehension tests or assessments, as well as comprehension instruction. You're also going to be viewing the Colorado Department of Education modules, Dr. David Kilpatrick modules, 5.1, the simple view of reading, 5.2, skills required for language and reading comprehension, 9.1, reading comprehension tests, and 9.2, language comprehension and related tests. So again, you're going to have I do not have any guided notes for these this week. So you do not have to complete any guided notes because I have you doing some other activities. Okay. So you're going to want to, the assessment you're going to be administering for your case study task 4 is the maze assessment. So if you're not familiar with the maze assessment, this is part of the DIBELS assessment measures. Please be sure to read through these administration directions thoroughly. So there's a PowerPoint that'll go through the administration directions very specifically. Sorry, my dogs are playing in the background. If you hear that noise, I apologize. They're a little wound up today. So make sure you read the administration directions thoroughly because you're going to be actually scoring a sample maze assessment and then you're going to be administering it possibly depending on the age or grade level of your field student in the field. So for this week, you're going to take your lesson 7 quiz. You're going to work on your case study task 4, assessing vocabulary and comprehension, and we'll get into that in a moment. And then, of course, we're going to, once you score the maze for your case study task, then you will then administer that maze or an alternative assessment to your field student. Again, this is part of your digital case study then. All the assessments that you administer to your field student are part of that digital case study, which you will put together next week in lesson 8. So additional resources here: explicit intervention in vocabulary, small group scaffolding of complex texts, and explicit intervention in comprehension. So let's take a look. Here's your lesson 7 quiz, which will cover the content that you cover in your reading and then the Kilpatrick modules. We have reading comprehension. Do we have it right? This used to be a perusal assignment, but I changed it this term. So let's take a look at what you're going to be doing. So we have 2 articles that I originally had uploaded to perusal: Why American Students Haven't Gotten Better at Reading in 20 Years, and Elementary Education Has Gone Terribly Wrong. And these are both authored by Natalie Wexler. So what I've done is I uploaded these into Notebook LM. If you're familiar with that, that is it's actually a generative AI tool, and it created a podcast and a video using the information that was in the article. So it kind of synthesized the information and created these 2 different formats. So I thought, of course, you're more than welcome to read the full articles, but I thought it might be a different way to consume the information through a podcast and a video. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to listen to the podcast and view the video. So you'll see here, this is the podcast, America's Reading Crisis, Wrong Teaching for 20 Years. Here's the link. And then this is the video, Why Reading Skills Don't Work. And here is the link. Okay, so you're going to start by listening to the podcast and viewing the video. The next thing you're going to do is there are 2 questions that follow, and they are right here, knowledge gap questions. So if you click on this, it's going to take you to a little quiz where it has 2 open-ended questions that I'd like you to answer. Once you answer those, so if you notice this little asterisk here, I've set this as a prerequisite. Once you answer and submit that, these answers should become available to you. So these are the actual answers to the questions that you just answered. So they're model answers, so they're very extensive. So basically, I've told you that you'll be given full credit for those questions if you include at least one of the concepts from each of these questions, from each of these model answers. Okay. So once you answer those questions, review the model answers, then you're going to reflect. Okay. So these articles were both published quite a while ago, 2018, 2019, and much has been done both legislatively and then through the professional development of teachers, administrators, to align literacy practice with the science, right? Cognitive science. So I want to know, in your experience, so in your district, in your grade level, in your school, if you're student teaching now, or if you have field experience, share your experience with what changes, if any, have been made to comprehension instruction that align with the cognitive science recommendations that you're going to learn about here. And then you're simply going to click here and add a comment. Okay. So that is the reading comprehension do we have it right assignment. And then if we return back to lesson 7, slowly. Here we go. We're going to go down to here. So here's your case study task 4. So again, it's very similar to what you've been doing for 1, 2, and 3. The only difference is you do not have a peer review this week. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be, again, reading through those scoring guidelines for the maze. Okay, so there's a video here and a PDF. You can choose how you want to consume it, or both. You're going to download and print the following assessment and score it according to the scoring guidelines. So this is a completed maze that was given to a student. You're going to score it according to the scoring guidelines, okay? And then after you do that, you're going to provide your completed scoring sheet to the assignment. And again, because this is a silent reading measure and reading comprehension is dependent on many, many factors, you don't necessarily have all the information you need about this particular student that you're scoring the assessment for, right? So what are some questions? So I want you in your, so instead of your summary, what you're going to do is you're going to submit some questions that you would need to answer in order to prescribe next steps in instruction for comprehension and how these factors influence comprehension. So what additional information do you need to know about this student, okay? And then what other data sources could you use in combination with this assessment to consider for next steps in comprehension instruction? So make sure that you're, so again, you're not necessarily summarizing the assessment data. You're giving the final scores according to the scoring guidelines. But tell me, what additional information do you need? What additional assessment data could be helpful in informing next steps for instruction for this student? Okay. All right. And then let's return to lesson 7 here. And again, let's move down here. This I've linked here early, and I've linked this here early. This is also linked in lesson 8 that I'm going to open early if you want to get started on your digital case study as well as your field experience time log. For your field work, you are either going to administer the maze or you're going to be administering an alternate assessment. So the maze is administered to students in grades 3 through 6. So if your student is in K1 or 2, you're going to administer a different assessment. Okay. So if they're in grades 3 through 6, you're going to administer the maze assessment. And here are the student worksheets and the scoring keys for those. Okay. Something really important. If your school administers the maze, please do not administer it to your students. This will skew their testing results, right? So instead, I want you to use a progress monitoring passage for the appropriate grade level. So you can go ahead and access those here at the DIBELS website, okay? So please do not administer the assessment if your school administers it formally, okay? Here's the Cadence benchmark scores so that you can compare how your student did when you take a look. Okay, if you're working with a kindergarten first or second grader, instead, this is what you will administer. So in kindergarten, you're going to choose a book to read aloud and prepare comprehension questions. Again, here you're not measuring reading comprehension. You're reading language comprehension because you're reading aloud to the student, okay? So it kind of tells you what information I would like. First grade again. Here's a passage. If this is fall term, you might want to read the passage aloud to the student and have them orally answer the comprehension questions. Again, make note if you're reading aloud, you are assessing their language comprehension, not their reading comprehension. If it's spring or summer, we'll want you to try to have them read it aloud to you, okay? Always provide an opportunity for them to read it independently first. And if they struggle too much with the decoding, then you can read aloud, but please make note that you are measuring their language comprehension. Second grade, here's a passage, blueberries, they're reading aloud, and then they're answering the questions, okay? So again, these assessments will take place of the maze for your digital case study because these students are younger than third grade. All right. Please reach out if you have any questions. Have a great week.